Good morning, everybody. I have the pleasure to welcome you all to this virtual event on rewriting the narratives for the EU-Africa dialogue. The Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association is organizing at the EU-Africa Week, this first edition, in the run-up of the 6th EU-African Union Summit happening today and tomorrow in Brussels to discuss the dimension of Africa-EU partnership. So we are very happy to organize this virtual event. The Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association is an independent regional innovative think tank acting on the Mediterranean and Africa, and it is founded in 2012, and it is based in Barcelona. So we are doing in-house policy research, action development, implementation capacity, and also we have a large network of experts and institutions in Europe, Mediterranean, and Africa. So we're doing analysis and contributing to the policy debate and also to the economic assessment and economic development in the Europe, Africa, and the Mediterranean. I am the founder and president of Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. I'm an economist by training and a professor of international business and finance at the Vice Business School at the City University of London. This summit is extremely timely when the world is starting to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're going into a sustainable transition. The EU-Africa partnership is essential to achieve sustainable, inclusive, and resilient recovery and future prosperity for Africa and for Europe. And for this, we are working to have cultural diversity, creativity, and entrepreneurship becoming essential pillars for this recovery. I'm very honored to welcome the distinguished speakers in this panel today. Next slide. Before I hand over to my good friend Jihan Tahri, who will moderate this session, I would like to share with you the initiative called Creative Mediterranean, CREACT for Med, which is funded by the EU Europe Aid program and coordinated by the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. Main objective of this initiative is to strengthen businesses and create jobs by creating support to entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs, particularly youth and women, in the cultural creative industry. Next slide, please. Our project targets specifically, as I mentioned, young people. Next slide. And next slide. So please move. This is our panel today. And then our initiative, which is the CREACT for Med. Next slide. So our initiative, CREACT for Med, is a collaborative initiative with partners from the Euromed region, which we aspire to enlarge also to the whole African Union. I invite you all to our website and platform to know much more about our objective, our activities, and what has been done so far. Our ambition is to promote the creative economy in the Mediterranean and in Africa from a public policy standpoint via proactive engagement of key institutional players to provide solutions for the entrepreneurs to really grow their businesses and create further talents in the regions, to create jobs for women and youth via supporting entrepreneurs to create value, connect, and generate decent jobs. But also we try to strengthen the culture and creative entrepreneurial ecosystem with the interlinkages between Europe, the Mediterranean, and Africa. Now, our initiative also offers knowledge, training, and funding for entrepreneurs, youth, and women in the cultural and creative industry. Please, next slide. The culture and creative sectors have been growing before COVID-19, and a major disruption happened because of the pandemic, and those sectors have been largely impacted by the difficulties and the economic hardship that has been going through. No, but these sectors must be further supported because they create value, they boost creativity, innovation, and then they are providers of job creation, job for women and youth, and also overall they are contributing to the well-being and overall health of the societies via creative, cultural, and artistic expressions. Next slide. So please join our community to see our activities going forward. So what is important also is that this sector is going through a digital transformation and also sustainable and health transitions that must be put into perspective. We also call for a coordinated action from private and public actors to accompany this nascent economy in the Mediterranean and Africa to be a motor of change in the future, in the years to come. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to my dear friend Jihan Tahri. Jihan is a great collaborator to the Euro-Mediterranean Economist Association. She's a multi-award winning film director, writer, visual artist, and producer. She currently serves as the general director of the Berlin-based documentary support institution Box. Also, Jihan has been a member of several academies, for example, the last one of the Oscars since 2017, and she's currently on the selection committee of the Locarno International Film Festival. So she has major experiences in film producing, in exhibition of art, visual, and so on. And she has accepted to moderate this event. Please, Jihan, I hand over to you. We don't hear you.
If we take the slide off, I will actually manage to see everyone and say hello. Thank you all for coming. And I do think that this is a very important initiative because as we know all from the creative sector, the interdependence between the continent and the European Union is fundamental. So I want to thank you all for being here. And actually, the past few weeks have been awash with news about restituting African artworks, the icons, the artifacts that have been in European museums over almost a century. The debate opened the door to re-examining the centrality of artistic creation to society's cohesion, both spiritually in terms of identity, of course, but more so, it has put on the table the need to revise the nature of the relationship between the creators from the south and the institutions in the north that are the main funders of the creative sector, or at least the internationally visible artistic creations. Arts and culture as an industry on the continent, or let's say the visible part of it, has grown exponentially over the past decade. But local support still lags behind. Local in terms of our governments, in terms of the local institution, it lags behind. So international funding is absolutely an essential ingredient that enables artists to produce. But it's not just about funding. So this reality makes us want to see what is the bridge. How can we envisage a way of readjusting the dominant narrative that governs the artistic spaces between the South and the North? Obviously, there have been a number of achievements, but still a lot remains to be done. And we're hoping that an illustrious panel like you will be able to think with us in terms of recommendations and thoughts through your challenges and your successes. So, well, without further ado, I would like to give a round to share the different experiences in the room from the continent mainly. So we'll start with the creative sector. And let's start with Najla Al-Ajeli from Libya. Najla.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jihan. Thank you for...
I wanted to introduce you.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't see you on the screen. If we can take away, please, the slide, then I get to see people. Voila. So Najla Al-Ajeli, I'll introduce you while the slide goes away. So yeah, you're an architect for over 20 years of experience in the profession. In 2012, you founded a private art foundation in London called Noon Arts Project. Your mission was to expose the best of contemporary Libyan art to the world. You've curated over 16 projects and collaborated with European festivals, foundations, including Casa Arabi in Spain, where you put together two very important exhibitions. One on pop art from North Africa, which showcased 19 artists, a collective, and another one retracing a disappearing landscape, which featured another 18 artists with links to Libya and addressing collective memory and personal histories. Najla, you're also an independent curator, and I think you've done more than anyone to get this recognition and diversity to the in Libya to the forefront. Tell us about your journey.
I can't believe it's 10 years since I started. It was in 2012, straight after post-Arab Spring. I was actually in Libya at the time. And for the first time in my life, I saw an incredible amount of artistic feedback that I've never seen before in my life. I mean, artists were exhibiting their work, they were showing their work, they were sharing their experience of what was happening in Libya at the time. So I said, you know what, why not start something where I would show the rest of the world what's happening in Libya. And it was my first exhibition. I organized it with the Arab Bridge Center in London. And it was a collective of 8 Libyan artists, male and female. And that's how it started. And it sort of somehow people were very interested to know what's going on culturally besides, what the newspapers and what the press tells us about Libya. It's a very difficult landscape to sort of show to the rest of the world, but that was like an icebreaker for me, and it began my journey. And then I started people sort of recognizing what I do, and I collaborated with another big exhibition in Malta because of the historical and sort of economic links between Malta and Libya. And that exhibition again was very successful, and it brought in sort of the feedback that I was looking for from the European audience and the Maltese audience in specific terms. And after that, more exhibitions followed in London, in the States. I mean, they were small, but the impact was quite strong. And my network started sort of, opening up. People started to know what we were doing. And then I got contacted by the Benetton Foundation in Italy in 2015. And at that time, actually, I left Libya because civil war, started. And they were doing a huge project called the EMEA, and they couldn't find anybody to sort of take them inside Libya, and where they wanted to reach out to 140 artists to produce artworks that will be part of the private collection of the Benetton Foundation. And that was one big challenge for me because I was in London and I had to reach out to 140 artists, which was another over this vast landscape that was divided. But we did it. It took me literally about a year to finalize the project, reach out to as many artists as I could. And it was a big surprise for me because I collaborated with people on the ground, and it was mainly through social media, through family, to get the artworks out, to reach out to people. And that sort of really pushed me to do more work in difficult sort of situations. And after that, also, because I was in London, I started to work with artists in the diaspora, not only from Libya, but from North Africa and the Arab world. And I collaborated with the Awan Festival in London for an exhibition of 6 female emerging artists from North Africa and the Middle East. And after that, I collaborated with Shabak and the Noor Festival. And so the story went on. And now I am working with artists and the pop art from North Africa, again, a big initiative that we worked with. I co-curated with an Algerian, actually, young curator based in London. And we had to reach out to artists from North Africa. And that was amazing as well. The experience and the journey, reaching out through social media. Sometimes it was physical, sometimes it was just virtual. And for the artists to trust me and to sort of see my vision on how I was going to present them in London. And then it went on to Casa Arabe in Madrid and in Cordoba. And this project was, it was very beautiful because I was working with local artists, and a lot of them, nobody heard of them or have seen their work before. And it's lovely now to see that some of them have achieved, their mission, and they are being acknowledged for their work, not only in Europe or in the West, but also, in their locality. So that's it. My journey has been, started with Libya, and now I find myself working with a bigger sort of landscape. And also because historically the region is very important in terms of its geography and history. It is the threshold really between Africa and Europe. And I believe the stories that are emerging from the artists, they all somehow intermingle, and I'm at the moment I'm working with the Sudanese Egyptian artist Amadou Al-Fadni, who's based in Cairo, and his exhibition, his first solo in London, finally is going to be showed in London in April. His work is about research into the history of slavery and immigration and colonialism. We're talking about that. And it's interesting how he presents his work in a very aesthetic, soft kind of way, not very aggressive. And he makes you think about how history and the present and the future are all somehow, interlinked together. So that's it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you'll tell us more about the actual setting up of the institution when we get back. Yes. But to continue the presentations, I'd like to present Mané Cisneros, who is a dear friend. And Mané is from Madrid. She is the founder and the director of the African Film Festival of Tarifa, which I had the honor to visit many times. And the Tarifa Film Festival is based on the diffusion of cinematography of the African continent and its diaspora in Latin America. It's probably the only film festival that takes place on 2 continents at the same time. And Mané actually went further to reinforce the dissemination of African cinema by creating Cine Nomada and mobile entertainment, the 2 devices that ensure itinerant screenings and that people in Europe also get to see African films. She is the coordinator of a study that aims to create a digital cinema network also in Mozambique, and to support African film festivals dedicated to the promotion and dissemination, especially of documentary, which is obviously very dear to my heart. Thank you, Mané. Mané will be speaking in French and there'll be translation. Donc, Mané Lefkat est un vrai modèle unique et après tant d'années, ça joue un vrai rôle dans l'échange, pas seulement entre l'Europe et l'Afrique, mais aussi l'Amérique latine. Vous avez une vision aussi globale. Est-ce que vous aviez cette vision aussi globale dès le départ de cette incroyable aventure? Racontez-nous un peu le trajectoire. J'entends pas. Unmute.
Oui, non?
Voilà.
C'est bon?
Oui.
Attends. Bonjour, Jeanne, et merci surtout de m'avoir fait partager avec vous ces moments si intéressants et ces réflexions à faire en commun. Et tu m'as posé une question tout au début, et justement qui m'a fait penser au fait que c'est vrai que depuis 20 ans que je travaille dans ces domaines, que j'ai créé le festival, et je n'ai fait que rencontrer des difficultés et de me poser et de nous poser, en termes d'équipe, des défis. C'est vrai que probablement, si j'avais imaginé ou conçu la situation qu'on allait trouver, peut-être que j'aurais pas créé ces festivals, parce que vraiment, vraiment, ça n'a pas été facile et c'est toujours pas facile. Ceci dit, vous m'avez demandé d'identifier 3 défis clés rencontrés au cours de ces 20 années. Je vais essayer de faire un effort, un exercice de synthèse pour vous les partager avec vous. Tout d'abord, je mettrai en premier lieu la méconnaissance absolue et les stéréotypes, les idées préconçues que nous avons rencontrés. Et on a créé un festival dans un endroit qui est à 14 km des côtes africaines, et on pensait que ces festivals auraient pu bâtir un pont entre les 2 continents, un pont par le cinéma, par le biais du cinéma, parce qu'on considérait que l'image cinématographique pouvait être un outil essentiel à l'heure de nous connaître. Ces 14 kilomètres sont devenus 140 kilomètres. On est si proche, mais on ne se connaît pas. Donc, je mettrai tout d'abord en premier lieu la méconnaissance qu'il y a entre les 2 continents, et un énorme travail à faire là-dessus. Et c'est un travail de déconstruction des stéréotypes, et sur lesquels on travaille encore, même 20 ans après d'avoir commencé avec cette aventure, ce festival. En deuxième lieu, et probablement conséquence de la première, c'est que les cinémas d'Afrique continuent à être considérés comme des cinémas sans qualité, bénévoles, difficiles à soutenir du point de vue économique. Et donc, du coup, il y a une manque absolue des politiques de soutien à la culture, des soutiens concrètement au cinéma. Ceci étant, je parle de l'Espagne, hein, et une manque d'intérêt, soit de la part des médias que de l'industrie cinématographique espagnole, pour des projets qui manquent de financement et qui ne sont pas considérés d'intérêt du point de vue économique. Donc, manque de politique de soutien, tout d'abord. En troisième lieu, je dirais, et même par rapport à ce que je viens de dire, c'est que les changements des gouvernements ont signifié des changements des politiques, et donc des politiques toujours à court terme qui ne permettent pas de consolider des projets. On a passé 20 ans à mettre en pied des projets qui avaient du mal à continuer le parcours parce qu'il y avait des gouvernements qui changeaient et qui changeaient complètement le rapport entre l'Espagne et l'Afrique. Donc, je dirais des politiques à long terme, à moyen et long terme sont absolument nécessaires pour pouvoir bâtir des projets solides. Et en dernier,
Allez, continue.
Ouais. Et en dernier, je voulais dire aussi que on a l'impression depuis 20 ans qu'on continue à entretenir la vision traditionnelle de la coopération. Coopérer, c'est développer, hein, et on a encore du mal à considérer la culture comme un espace d'opportunité et de futur, tant soit pour les Africains que pour les Européens.
Super. Justement, vous êtes allé au cœur du sujet. Thank you, Mané. This is exactly the problematic, I think, which will be very interesting to debate after the presentations of the creatives. Next, I move to Angèle Diabang. Angèle, merci d'être là. I know Angèle is in the middle of shooting, and so very kind to be here. Donc, Angèle Diabang-Brenner, she's a screenwriter, a director, a film producer from Senegal. She runs a production company, Caronica, which is credited with over a dozen films. Her first film, Mon Beau Sourire, was acclaimed internationally, and so were all her following films. Her last documentary, which was Un médecin pour sauver les femmes, about Dr. Denis Mukwege in the Congo, based on which he went to win in 2018 a Nobel Peace Prize. Angèle also directed a number of fiction films, shorts, and now working on her long. She's basically won most of the prestigious awards in the film industry on the continent, including Best Director at Sako. And from 2014 to 2016, Angèle was the president of the board of directors of SODAV, which is the collective management of copyright in Senegal. Merci, Angèle. En fait, moi la question pour démarrer votre expérience, je voulais savoir comment vous avez fait pour naviguer tout ce monde compliqué de l'audiovisuel international en tant que réalisatrice et productrice, et ton expérience de ce parcours absolument incroyable.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Merci Jeanne, merci à tous pour ce panel intéressant. Je suis contente d'être avec vous pour ce court instant. Et c'est pas évident de trouver l'équilibre à comment naviguer entre réalisatrice et productrice. Au départ, je voulais même pas être ni réalisatrice ni productrice. Je voulais être monteuse, moi. C'est ça qui m'intéressait. Donc, je sais pas, est-ce que je dois attendre pour la traduction ou pas en anglais? D'accord.
Il y a un bip, ça vient de quelque part?
Oui, il y a dans ma voiture, il y a quelqu'un qui a laissé son sac par contre, et un technicien qui est en train de tourner. Je voulais pas
c'est pas grave, continue Angèle.
Ouais.
Ça fait bruit de fond, oui. C'est très bien.
C'est ça. Donc je disais que c'était pas évident parce que je ne voulais être ni réalisatrice ni productrice, mais les difficultés rencontrées au cours du chemin ont d'abord fait de moi, on va dire, je dirais une productrice, parce que j'ai créé la boîte de production pour pouvoir finaliser un film qui avait des difficultés avec le producteur. Et du coup, après avoir fait ce film-là que j'ai pu finir, d'autres réalisatrices qui avaient des difficultés sont venues vers moi en me disant, j'ai ce projet-là, j'ai des difficultés, je ne sais pas comment le faire. Et ça me gêne ce son. Excusez-moi. Je ne sais pas comment. Désolée,
C'est pas grave, c'est le genre de choses, juste
oui,
quand
j'ai
tu t'en
besoin
vas, ça
d'appeler
commence
quelqu'un
à
pour dire
sonner.
de venir chercher.
Voilà.
De venir chercher le sac. Mais s'il te plaît, il faut que tu viennes chercher ton sac parce que ça n'arrête pas de sonner et je suis en ligne avec le Zoom. Désolée, hein, oui, ça sonne, je ne sais pas comment l'arrêter. Merci. I'm sorry.
Il n'y a pas de problème.
Donc du coup, et devenir réalisatrice aussi, moi j'étais juste monteuse et contente de l'être. Mais à force de donner mon avis sur les projets des gens, parce qu'à chaque fois que des réalisateurs talentueux dans mon entourage avaient des projets, ils me disaient, toi, il paraît que tu écris bien. Est-ce que tu peux me relire mon dossier? Et quand j'avais fini de relire le dossier, j'aimais bien faire des fiches de lecture. Et à chaque fois, ils me disaient, mais c'est fou, tu veux pas réaliser aussi? Tu dis que tu veux monter, mais en même temps, ton regard sur nos projets sont bien. Alors, c'est dommage que tu ne veuilles pas réaliser. Et c'est comme ça que de fil en aiguille, je me suis dit, mais pourquoi ne pas prendre ma caméra et aller filmer le tatouage des gencives? Et comme j'avais une musique qui mentait l'esprit, une musique qui n'arrêtait pas, que j'écoutais, et je me suis dit, cette musique peut devenir quelque chose avec le tatouage des gencives. Et c'est comme ça que j'ai réuni un peu d'argent que j'avais. Je suis allée filmer le tatouage des gencives. Et comme j'étais monteuse, je me suis amusée à le monter avec cette musique-là que j'aimais bien. Et c'est de là qu'est venu mon premier film, Mon beau sourire. Et d'ailleurs, quand je suis allée à l'USAS, parce que Jean-Marie Barbe de l'USAS l'avait vu et me disait, c'est génial, on va le sélectionner à l'USAS. Et je lui ai dit, c'est pas un film. Je me suis amusée en tant que monteuse, mais si vous voulez le sélectionner à un festival, alors il faut que j'en fasse un film, que j'interviewe des gens, qui parlent, qui expliquent c'est quoi le tatouage des gencives. Et Jean-Marie Barbe m'a dit, ne touche à rien, c'est déjà un film, tu ne fais rien, tu ne changes pas. Je suis allée à l'USAS pour le festival, et à chaque fois des gens m'approchaient, qu'on voulait m'interviewer en disant la réalisatrice, je disais, excusez-moi, je ne suis pas réalisatrice, je suis monteuse. Oui, mais c'est toi qui as fait le film. Je dis oui, je l'ai fait, mais je ne suis pas réalisatrice. Et il a fallu du temps pour accepter justement ce terme. Je voulais toujours j'ai dit, j'ai fait le film, mais je suis monteuse. Donc, ma fonction, c'est monteuse, c'est pas réalisatrice. Donc, voilà comment je suis devenue réalisatrice. Et pour la production, justement, le fait d'aider d'autres femmes à finir leurs projets a fait que la boîte de production s'est retrouvée avec justement plusieurs projets qu'on avait produits et où on avait pu trouver de l'argent pour que ces projets-là se fassent. Donc, un catalogue commençait à se mettre en place et puis j'ai pris goût à la production et aujourd'hui, je fais plus de production que de réalisation.
Je
Et
sais.
je suis contente, ouais. Parce qu'on est aussi on est plus en sécurité. Moi, j'aime bien quand je produis parce que quand on réalise, on se met à nu. On est plus fragile. C'est nous qu'on juge. Est-ce qu'on va y arriver? Et j'ai plein de complexes en réalisant des fictions. Je me dis, je ne suis pas réalisatrice de fiction. Je connais le documentaire, mais le fiction, ils connaissent mieux que moi. Ils l'écrivent mieux que moi. Donc, ça crée quelques complexes en réalisation de fiction, alors que en production, je sais fédérer une équipe pour que toutes les énergies soient là pour réussir un bon film.
Oui. Et justement, quand on revient sur le modèle de cette interaction, parce que en tant que productrice, le financement est essentiel. Et c'est là où ce pont entre l'Afrique et l'Europe est essentiel. Donc, avant d'y retourner, je voudrais présenter Anna Soler-Ponte. Anna, merci d'être avec nous. Anna est de Barcelone sorry, now I need to speak in English. Anna is from Barcelona, and in 1992, she founded the Pontus Literary and Film Agency, which is a pioneer in publishing practices that targeted women's access to books on the African continent. She's also uniquely placed in negotiating book options for film adaptations. She's traveled the 5 continents in search of authors and human stories. She's also a writer and film producer, including the film adaptation of Traces of Sandalwood. Thank you, Anna, for being with us. And you chose quite an uncharted terrain, which is disseminating books and facilitating film adaptation. So quite a pioneer on this level. Can you share with us your challenges and achievements and tell us about this trajectory?
Sure. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Very interesting to be listening to my colleagues. Well, yes, I just became a literary agency without knowing what a literary agency was. It was in '91. I was studying Arabic. I did all my studies in Arabic in the university in Barcelona. And I traveled to Cairo just to improve my Arabic. And well, it's a long story, but I just met Naguib Mahfouz there. And he told me that he was nobody. He was too old. Nobel Award meant nothing to him anymore. And that if I just wanted to meet important authors, I had to just go with him to a cafe by the Nile and to meet young people, much younger people than him. Of course, I followed him. And I met a few women authors there. There were mainly men authors, but a few women authors who literally filled my suitcase with their novels and asked me, begged me to try to find publishing houses in the West, in Europe, that could translate them from Arabic into other languages. So that was my beginning, really, at 23-year-old, starting calling publishing houses, trying to ask them if they could translate those novels. So the journey just went on, and I decided that I wanted to do this, to be the bridge between different cultures through literature. So I set up the company. It was very difficult. So this year I'm celebrating 30 years that Pontus exists. But at the beginning was really, really difficult to try to convince first authors to be represented by me, and then try to convince publishing houses around the world to buy the rights and translate those authors. So anyway, I had this feeling that was the journey to take. So try to really, really push the talent coming from Africa, mainly first North Africa, but then I just went down south to the Zimbabwe Book Fair, went to South Africa, went to Ghana to a women's writing conference. I just started to invest in many travelings, working hard, and really trying to push that talent coming from Africa to the north. So I then traveled to India and started a long journey in Asia. So anyway, Pontus, the name of the company, is really known now, 30 years after that, intuition a young woman had, it was me. It's a company that is well established, being the bridge between literature coming from Africa and Asia and the West. So we've been pushing authors that maybe, like Kopano Matlua from South Africa, she's published into 15 languages, or Ayesha Runahata from Ghana, she's also published into several languages, or Gigi Bola, he's a former Congolese refugee, but he's now a British citizen. Yesterday he was launched in the US, and we've sold the adaptation rights to Hollywood big studio, for instance. So and I'm really, really pleased that he's a former refugee from Congo writing in English is now going to be adapted by a major studio, and his novel is published by Simon & Schuster in the US since yesterday. So this is what.
Oh, congratulations!
This type of thing that I could just go on and on. I'm really, really pleased that. And by the way, I always say that I started only representing women authors. That was my main focus, and my team knows that minimum 70% of our clients have to be women, because and we know that we make much more money with men, and this is the reality. So it's amazing. Even buyers of books, even if a majority of women around the world, it's always men who are the most bought. So we try from the beginning of the chain, we try to represent much more women than men. So 70% of our client list are women, and mainly coming from the harsh continents, but mainly coming from the African continent. And this is what we do, to really push those stories that have to be told, that have to be translated, that have to be taken to the screen. And I never give up. And what I really enjoy the most is just discovering, if I can say discovering, I don't like this verb, but trying to discover new voices from Africa, like Rashoke Manenzi. She's a new shooting star in South Africa, and she writes in English, and now she's everywhere, and we're trying to really try to find translation.
I'm sure Angèle is listening very attentively, because Angèle's fiction is based on a novel too. So it's a very important bridge. And thank you, Anna. And you know, we've kind of gone through the visual arts, the festivals, the film scene, and books now. And Yusuf, I'll go to Yusuf now, Yusuf Mishmish, who's in design. Yusuf Mishmish is an independent product designer with extensive experience on both sides of the Mediterranean. He founded Design Tunsi, the first alternative platform in Tunisia dedicated to the development and democratization of the profession of designer. His platform has ventured to fill the gap in local understanding of how design culture impacts society and businesses in Tunisia. I'm very, very curious about design, Yusuf, because design cuts across creative industries and businesses, obviously. Design as a word is a bit difficult to grasp in terms of what it represents in each different way. So, but did you start with an idea of how you would make the creative and business sides of your initiatives to marry and form a new concept? Ah, il fallait que je dise tout ça en français, c'est ça? Yusuf?
Oui, non, pas du tout, c'est très bien.
Vous avez compris la question?
Oui, bien sûr, j'ai compris la question.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation. En fait, après avoir fait mes études à Tunis, j'ai commencé le design à Tunis. J'ai fait une licence en design produit, et en partant vers Paris pour continuer mes études, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait un énorme problème de culture. Ce n'était pas lié à un savoir-faire ni à la façon de comment on étudiait le design, mais c'était plus la culture. Donc, très vite, je me suis rendu compte de cette problématique-là, et en lançant, après mes études, j'ai lancé ma boîte de design à Paris, et j'ai commencé à travailler essentiellement pour des maisons de luxe. J'étais un peu spécialisé dans la stratégie de design. C'est là où j'ai commencé à me dire que, en fait, les problématiques que moi j'ai eues en arrivant en France, fallait que je les partage avec les étudiants en Tunisie pour ne pas avoir les mêmes problématiques. Donc j'ai commencé en parallèle de mon travail à faire des allers-retours entre Paris et Tunis, à faire des workshops et des conférences où je partageais avec les étudiants tout simplement mon expérience professionnelle. Et en juillet 2020, à cause ou grâce à la Covid, j'ai commencé à m'intéresser un peu plus au monde du design en Tunisie, et à vouloir faire partie de cet écosystème-là et me lancer en Tunisie, ouvrir ma boîte en Tunisie. Et c'est là où j'ai vraiment réalisé que les étudiants sont un peu bloqués dans un monde théorique, avec une vision totalement biaisée du monde professionnel, qui commence à perdre confiance de plus en plus dans ce domaine, à vouloir quitter la Tunisie ou se reconvertir vers d'autres domaines. D'un autre côté, il y avait les consommateurs qui, eux, étaient aussi perdus. Ils comprenaient pas en quoi, qu'est-ce qu'un designer et en quoi il peut les aider et réduisent généralement notre travail à faire du beau pour vendre. On a les designers qui, eux, travaillent dans leur coin, ils sont pas assez mis en valeur. Des fois, ils veulent pas volontairement se mettre en valeur parce qu'il y avait des problèmes de propriété intellectuelle en Tunisie et ils n'ont pas de statut malheureusement juridique de designer. Donc tous ces problématiques-là que j'ai constaté en arrivant en Tunisie m'a donné l'idée de cette initiative-là qui s'appelle Design to See, qui a pour but de démocratiser, comme l'a dit si bien JN, de démocratiser la culture du design, mais aussi valoriser le métier de designer, tout simplement en créant des bases. Dans un premier temps, la première solution qu'il fallait faire, c'était d'avoir un média pour parler nous-mêmes du design, de partager, de communiquer, d'informer les gens sur ce que c'est le design. Donc j'ai commencé par faire des interviews de designers français vivant en Tunisie et tunisiens vivant en Tunisie et en France, que je partageais un peu sur YouTube et Instagram. Et après les retours que j'ai eus, il y avait énormément d'engouement et de gens intéressés à vouloir comprendre ce que c'est, les designers qui voulaient encore plus parler du design. L'initiative a continué à évoluer et le but premier, c'est de euh, pouvoir aider la nouvelle génération à s'intégrer dans le milieu professionnel, leur faciliter l'accès à l'entrepreneuriat, leur redonner espoir et confiance dans leur domaine pour qu'ils puissent rester, se battre et travailler pour. C'est un domaine qui est très important, qui lie toutes les entreprises où on peut trouver ce domaine-là dans toutes les entreprises. Donc, l'impact du design est grand, mais les gens ne se rendent pas compte de ce que c'est. Il y a plusieurs spécialités dans le design. Ça peut aller de la décoration de maison, qui est l'architecture d'intérieur, à le design des services publics qui est totalement politique et public. Donc tout ce côté-là me pousse à montrer tout ce qu'on peut faire avec le design et pourquoi pas essayer de créer des collaborations internationales pour pouvoir échanger entre savoir-faire et talent. Et je pense, enfin moi j'espère et je suis en train de me battre pour essayer de faire une biennale de design, un rendez-vous de design qui pourra peut-être être la solution un peu à toute cette problématique-là de culture, de design et de métiers liés au manque d'informations liées au design.
Ben, c'est super intéressant. Un biennale de design, c'est pas mal. Et c'est justement là, next we go to Mr. Kunle Afolayan, who basically regroups all these different hats all in one. Kunle, are you there? I can't see anyone on my screen. Yes. So Kunle basically regroups everything. Kunle is an award-winning Nollywood actor. He's a filmmaker, a movie producer, and he designs clothes. I'm going to stop because then we'll take the whole session saying what Kunle does. But Kunle is the CEO and founder of Cap TV and Golden Effects. His creative hub is amongst the most active on the continent. He works with all the major international broadcasters and platforms, including Netflix. Some say that he's on his way to rival Hollywood, which he'll tell us about that. Kunle studied economics and worked as a banker before fully delving into the movie industry. As a producer, he is known to have done the second highest grossing Nigerian film of all time. So, Kunle, your business model is quite unusual on the continent since you actually make money uh, and you continue to branch out into every aspect of the industry. Did you kind of have a clear model in your head, or did you simply invest in whatever you thought was missing? Tell us about
All right.
your how you started building all of this.
Thank you, my friend here. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here this morning. Um, again, I'm also filming. I filmed till 3 a.m. this morning, but I'm glad that I'm able to make this session. Well, I started as an actor, and but again, my father was born into a family of theater and filmmaking practice, and but my father passed um, about 20 something years ago. But I worked in the bank briefly. I resigned in 2004. But before then, I've been doing acting here and there. I've worked with one of the best filmmaker in Nigeria, Tunde Kelani, in 1998. And I did a few films. But I started my film production company in 2005. And but before then, I went to New York Film Academy, where I studied digital filmmaking. Then came back to Nigeria and then started a production company. Uh, and and then Nigeria is a terrain where we're not really privileged to have grants, like a lot of people in francophone, benefits, and these put a lot of I mean, the onus rests on every filmmaker who have dreams and who have vision to ensure that they find alternative ways, of making their films, on their own. So for me, it's always been my motive and approach has always been, yes, I have ideas. I'm an artist, but how do I make it happen? So I've been very conscious of the entrepreneurial side to filmmaking. Mm, so when I made my first film, I ran around, families and friends, and I made, a small film which eventually won at the Amas Award and really was premiered at the London Film Festival, at BFI, and Pan Africa Film Festival in Los Angeles, and this was 2007. And from them, I took it further. I made Figure, which got really bigger, and all of that. And now, a few years down the lane, I've built a structure that I feel is sustainable. Now I have a production company. We have our own equipment. We have our own studio. Um, where I'm currently filming is a film village and a resort that I'm working on, and it's situated on 45 acres of land somewhere in Oyo State in Nigeria, and it's very exotic because it has mountain and all of that. So we're currently building all the sets we're using at the moment are built specifically for the film, and we're going to retain them because some of them are, solid structures, and we just use facade to maybe partition a few of them. Also, I currently have a film school which is running, and for the film school, we have a section of it that is in partnership with Mastercard Foundation, and we are to train 300,000 students in 3 years through e-learning. And
Wow.
we also have another section, another intervention fund from Netflix and USC. And these we're going to be training on post production, sound, and edit. And this is also going to be for a year, and it's going to be free to students. And I think the only reason why these platforms and all these organizations, are willing and able to partner or willing to partner is because managed to build a structure that is sustainable, and and I think the future is in the future sort of structured itself. So for me, I'm a passionate filmmaker, but at the same time, I'm very conscious of the fact that art must feed you. You must earn from from your passion, and it's working for me.
That's precisely the big question. Arts must feed you, and your experience, you'll tell us more about it. But, I think that after all these inspiring stories you've been telling, I believe our amazing panel of economists and decision makers and the business savvy entrepreneurs have a lot to comment on, and maybe they should share their reflections and propose models like out of your model, which I hope you will delve into a bit more, Kunle, but also alternative models. Maybe we could start with a few questions or comments on what's already been said. And our experts and economists will express the points they wish to bring to the table. Maybe I should briefly introduce the remaining panelists who thank you very, very much for being with us, and I hope you were as inspired with all these success stories we've listened to. So I'll just say a few words and then I'll leave the floor after that for direct interaction between you and the creatives. Let me start with Mr. Mubarak Low, who I'm absolutely honored to have with us. Mr. Mubarak Low is a prominent economist. He's currently the mayor of the Louga region in Senegal, and as a candidate of Alternative Les Verts. He is the president of the Emergence Institute, which specializes in economic and strategic planning. He's the Director General of the Economic Foresight Bureau. Mr. Lowe has served as an economic advisor and expert to several prime ministers in Senegal, and was Deputy Director of the Cabinet of President Macky Sall in Senegal. He's also an expert for the United Nations, the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and then African Union. And I'm sure I am missing quite a lot. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe, for being with us. And I'll leave the floor for you to start. Maybe what I can do is introduce everybody. Would you rather I introduce everybody at the same time and then leave you to it? Or like this, the conversation will happen? Or maybe you could just start with your comments, whichever you prefer.
Oh, whatever you want.
Okay.
Maybe you can introduce everybody.
Yes, okay, I'll introduce everybody. After Mr. Lowe, I am absolutely delighted to be with Ms. Nagla Bahar, who has more than 30 years of experience in finance, economic development, strategic planning with a focus on emerging markets. She is the managing director of the Credit Guarantee Company in Egypt since 2015, and she's a renowned expert in structuring and managing guarantee schemes, and has practiced worldwide. So, and prior to 2015, Ms. Bahra served under both local and international umbrellas of British Petroleum, Shell, Fulbright Commission, finance and banking consultancies. She's interacted and worked closely with different international and bilateral institutions worldwide. She also acts as the chairwoman of the Euro-Mediterranean Guarantee Network. And similarly, I'm sure I'm not giving enough insight into all the things, because but we'll take it. She'll add on to that if when she intervenes. Next is Dr. Pierre Luigi Sako. Thank you for being here. He is a senior advisor to the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, regions, and cities, associate researcher with the CNR ISPC in Naples, also a professor of cultural economics, very interesting, at the University of Chieti Pescara. I'm sure I'm destroying the name. And a senior researcher at the Metal Lab at Harvard University. He is also the special advisor to the European Commissioner for Education and Culture, and a member of the European Research Advisory Board, of the Economics, also Cultural Committee of the Italian Ministry of Culture, and the Advisory Council for Research and Innovation of the Czech Republic, and similarly advisory board of the Creative in Georgia. He works and consults internationally in the fields of cultural-led local development. And of course, last but not least, Professor Reem Ayadi, whom you met at the beginning, who was kindly organizing this session. She's the founder and president of the Euro-Mediterranean Economist Association, EMEA. She is the director of CREACT for Med, a project and director of the European EU Mediterranean and African Network for Economic Studies. Professor Ayadi is a senior advisor at the Center for European Policy Studies, a professor at the Bayes Business School, City University of London, and member of the Center for Banking Research, an academic member and chair of the European Banking Authority, and the Banking Stakeholders Group. She is also an associated scholar at the Center for Relationship Banking and Economics at LUMSA University in Rome. So as you can see, we have an amazing panel of economists, advisors, thinkers. So now I'm opening the floor for you to react and engage with these amazing creative initiatives and success stories we engage with, especially on the level of the challenges and the achievements that we see in that dialogue between Europe and the African continent. We'll start with Mr. Mubarak Low.
Thank you. Maybe I will speak in French to be more effective in my speech. So, je voudrais saluer Reem Ayadi. Je suis dans l'advisory board de EMEA, l'organisme qu'elle dirige, et je suis également founding member. En tout cas, le bureau que je dirige de EMANES, donc le réseau des économistes de North-Africa, Afrique et Méditerranée. Donc, je suis très content d'être dans le panel. Je me rappelle quand j'étais étudiant à l'ENA en France, j'avais fait un mémoire et le titre c'était « La culture, parent pauvre du développement ». Et donc, la question se pose toujours, est-ce que la culture est vraiment le parent pauvre du développement? Est-ce que les pays, notamment en développement, intègrent la dimension culturelle dans le statut de développement? Maintenant, il y a deux aspects. Il y a d'abord la culture en tant qu'identité, parce que aujourd'hui, il y a des théories économiques qui essayent d'intégrer la dimension culturelle dans le management, notamment le management culturel, ou voir le succès de certains pays, comme le Japon ou des pays asiatiques, en faisant mention de la culture, notamment le confucianisme, pour ce qui concerne un pays comme la Chine. Et donc, ça, c'est une question qui est posée, parce que, bon, on parle de discipline, on parle de travail dur, etc. Et donc, il y a ce premier aspect, comment tenir compte de la culture pour en faire un levier du développement, c'est-à-dire de l'identité, des valeurs nationales, etc. Comment? Oui, le deuxième élément, c'est la culture sous forme d'industrie culturelle, de création. C'est peut-être ça qui nous réunit aujourd'hui. Et là, je suis très impressionné par la qualité des exposés et la richesse de la production des créateurs. Je découvre Angèle Diaban, que je connaissais rapidement de nom, mais tout à l'heure, j'ai fait des recherches un peu sur ce qu'elle fait. J'étais très impressionné. Bon, j'en profite pour lui demander pourquoi elle ne finalise pas son projet sur une si longue lettre qu'elle voulait transformer en film. Et donc, dans un pays comme le Sénégal, il y a un effort qui est fait. L'État a mis en place un fonds de soutien à la production cinématographique et audiovisuelle. Il faudrait multiplier ce type d'initiative parce que ça donne confiance aux créateurs, ça leur permet aussi de pouvoir mobiliser d'autres financements. Donc, il y a un effet de levier qui est créé à travers ces financements publics. Et d'ailleurs, le président du Sénégal a demandé qu'il y ait un fonds africain de soutien à la cinématographie. Parce qu'on ne peut pas tout attendre, disons, de la communauté internationale ou de l'aide internationale. Je pense qu'il faut qu'au niveau des pays, les cinéastes, les créateurs soient déjà soutenus. C'est ça qui permet de mobiliser d'autres soutiens à l'international. Il faut également que le secteur bancaire soutienne les cinéastes et les créateurs, parce que tout à l'heure, je parlais d'un fonds, parce que le fonds fonctionne sous la forme d'une avance à rembourser sur recette, c'est quelque chose qu'une banque devrait pouvoir faire. Donc, comment rendre bancables les projets des créateurs, ça aussi, c'est un défi qu'il faudrait adresser.
Justement, est-ce que, sorry, I'll speak in English and the translation will do the rest. How to get the cultural programs credit-worthy? That is a very, very important question that maybe Ms. Nagla Bahar is best placed to respond to, given that you have a credit guarantee company, and obviously culture is not the most obviously bankable thing. So tell us how first of all, your reaction to some of these initiatives, if you have any questions to specific creatives, and tell us more about yourself and how your recommendations for this.
Jihan, thank you very much actually for the introduction, and thank you very much for the organizers, letting us being part of this very, very interesting session. I've been enjoying listening to all those creators, and with passion actually talking about their projects and where they are. And this is where the most important point that we have to stress on, how these cultural aspects, filmmaking, books, visual architects, all of these actually are having a real impact, not only at the level of the economic and social, and here everything has been mixed in one pot now, social affecting economics and the economics affecting social, and everything is affected by each other. So there is a brilliant aspect of cultural role in fostering the economies where finance is coming after, because through this we've been seeing, lots of films, books, affecting people, affecting their way of thinking, driving certain thoughts and whatever it is, and sometimes driving even restrictions, or affecting freedom or something like that, So there are all these concepts of culture that need to be supported to properly play its role, and effect on social and then affecting the economy itself. Now, actually, this is clear across the minds of all the policymakers, and how can we help posting this importance of culture affecting economy, and then we come to finance, So this is where the dialogue is important that we're talking about. This is where actually this exchange of thoughts in between, as we said, North and South. Our part of the South, is full of lots of cultures, histories, a different way of thinking. Wherever you go across Africa, I was not blessed to go across all Africa, but across number of countries, and each has its own identity and beauty and historic in-depth, and it needs just to be organized in a way that will enable all the people on board playing a role in the culture, and the new, in particular, using new instruments and new ways actually of presenting their thoughts, to affect. Because here we've seen brilliant projects, from the first part of the meeting, brilliantly, it's really the whole ideas are magnificent. Everybody having a thought that is really passionately had been addressed, but how to make that big? How to make it actually effective? How it's not one case here and one there, still the effect is very small. We need to build that inside, firstly, policymaker to understand that this is one of the very important public policy objectives, and I think if not all the countries, they have like a public policy for culture. I'm sure everybody is having like a cultural development policy, blah, blah, blah. But how to make it work? Here, we can acquire, making this organized in a scientific way to enable a kind of a mass effect, not individual cases effect that it's still limited. So firstly, to look at these policies and make it workable, make it realistic, take into consideration people are using now digital, God knows what, so within these digital platforms, you can spread tons of ideas, tons of films, books you can read, we're all going, when Kindle came in board and whatever, we were all having our books there. Okay, we miss the paper, we miss the book, but it is still there, we can see the film, I don't know, while we are on a taxi, so in reality, how can we utilize that to spread this culture thing up? And then, how can we help those people who are passionate about what are they doing? They are very, they love what are they doing. They are very creative people, but this is not enough to run a business. And this is not enough to build an industry. And this is not enough actually to pass your way for funding. Because as our colleague was just talking here actually about, he started to collect from his friends, families, some money to start the first film or whatever it is. But that won't last. We want sustainability. We want this to grow. And I adore how he grew and then attracted money from EU to start doing training. How you do your business plan, how you go into the bank to ask for finance, and again, this is something completely different, than the thinking of the bankers and the financial people. You tell them a film, they will say, film? What is it? You need upfront big investment. You have high level of uncertainty. It depends on viewers, on, I don't know, whatever it is, the reputation of the players within this. And they cannot assess that, when you go to the bank, they would like numbers, so it's not there. As guarantee, we can play a role, of course, and I understand even there is a model under European Investment Fund, they are having a grant, and definitely grants and public finance support needed within this approach. You cannot do it like a private now.
But that's a one-off that's really interesting, Nagla, because as Mr. Mubaraklo was saying, in Senegal, it's a very good model because the fact that the government created support for their cultural actors meant that from there on, the cultural actors could go and say, I'm supported. Can we start this dialogue? But if that doesn't exist, like Kunle, for example, his model, it's because he managed to get the highest grossing, then the banks came on.
Yes.
How do we move from exceptions to a structure where the ability for creatives to have this guarantee that allows us to go to partners in the West and say, this is my idea and it's worth it. I think that's something also we'll come back to you in a minute, but Dr. Pierre Luigi, sustainability is something I'm sure you've been talking about, and within the OECD and within the European Union. Thank you for being with us first, and if you can go ahead on that idea of where do we go from there?
Thank you very much, John. And that's a really exciting experience to participate in this debate. I am really learning a lot also about experiences that are going on that are absolutely interesting. And I think that this is a particularly favorable moment to discuss creative development in Africa, because we are in the middle of a very, very interesting shift from a narrative that has been so long dominated by the idea that the global culture and creative ecosystem was dominated by the Western the Western system, which is basically the mainstream culture we have been exposed to for such a long time. But what is happening now is that there is a really global movement from the global South, especially, that makes it very clear that the new, in some sense, the fresh resources, the fresh input is really coming from a completely different places now, and this is increasingly recognized. However, I think that also from the previous discussion, it's clear that we are we are in a crucial transition phase. It's undeniable that Africa has been a cradle of creativity, and this is not something we are discovering now. Basically, I mean, if one looks at the whole development, let's say, of the visual arts discourse, the music discourse, the theater discourse over the last century, I mean, the influence of African culture has been so overwhelming that is simply undeniable. But we are moving from a phase in which Africa has been mostly providing creative input to a mainstream industry that was based in the West, to a new situation in which we're witnessing the takeoff of an African creative industry. This is really interesting, and this is the crucial passage. Where is the difficulty? As far as I am concerned, I think that some of the aspects already emerged, but I think that the big difficulty is that still there is a limited understanding by policymakers about the fact that culture and creative production can be a main pillar for development. Because if you go today to the big decision-making context, priorities are on the usual suspects, which of course are absolutely indispensable, like providing infrastructure, technological development, and so on and so forth. But the fact that culture and creative industry is absent from this list in terms of the top priorities, that's the problem. Because I think that especially in a moment like this, culture can really become one of the forefronts of the developmental revolution on the African side. Look, for example, what's happening in Europe from this point of view. That's telling. Europe has the most ambitious project that Europe has in terms of European financing is the construction of so-called knowledge innovation communities, KICs, which are culture and creative, which are production ecosystems that span the strategically most important pillars of development. So Europe previously has launched kicks on topics like energy, digital, urban mobility. But now the new kick that is being launched in months' time is culture and creative industries. So, for example, there is now a growing recognition of the fact that this can really become a top priority. But the problem is that we see in the African context, and then I'm closing quickly, but in the African context, we see a mismatch between the strength and the really impressive power of creative development. We have seen fantastic experiences in this regard, and the difficulty of translating this into value chains that are solid and sustainable. So the point is now, in some sense, building the industry component and not simply as an input to the real, in quotes, industry in the West. That's no longer the case. The real industry is no longer exclusively in the West, but really building a real industry in Africa. So that's the challenge. And I think that from this point of view, awareness of policymakers, awareness of political and government leaders is, I think, the big step to take now, because this is still outside the main narrative, and this is the crucial step to be made.
I mean, I think it's really, I think you just completely nailed it, because I think it's the distinction also between the monetization of culture and the understanding that that the cultural sector can be the basis of the younger generation, what it is they create at home. And so this discrepancy between, especially in European spaces, that they constantly talk about the problem of immigration, whereas the reality is, if you consolidate sectors like culture, initiative, knowledge on the continent, you'd be much better off. And the monetization, this actual monetization shifts spaces. Before I get to Reem, Professor Reem, who will be wrapping up and closing the session, I think I just want to get back to Kunle for a minute, because in a way he bridged that gap. And I really wanted to understand, Kunle, what was actually the moment that allowed you to jump from the, is it a model, or is it just because the fact that they trusted to give you enough, the means to become sustainable? I mean, the word sustainability in culture is really complicated, because in all the different other sectors that we've been talking about, it's you start from scratch each and every time. You start an exhibition, you start looking for money from scratch. But your ability to create all these hubs, what was that turning point? Can you pinpoint where it actually made a difference?
Okay, well, thank you very much thank you. I'll say the whole thing was orchestrated, and it's not like there was a master plan or anything. There wasn't any master plan, but every step that I have taken, I've always said to myself that I'll start this and see this through. And it so happened that as I'm about rounding up one, it's paving way for another. Of course, I mean, after I set up Golden Effect, which is the parent company now, now we have about maybe 6-7 subsidiaries. I set up Golden Effect just as a film production company. And after we did, I think the turning point was when I made the film October 1. Because that was when, before then, as a filmmaker, you make a film, you go to film festivals looking for buyers and distributors. As a matter of fact, one of the festivals I really enjoy was Tarifa. And I think this was in 2010. thereabout. And then you look for buyers and distributors and sales agents. But because you're an independent filmmaker from Africa, it's always a hard sell because most of the other films that are like showcased or have prominence in festivals have some sort of co-production or stake from Europe. And you, as an indie filmmaker who is running solo, it is always difficult to compete. So I said to myself, you either continue to, go from one festival to the other and allow maybe small group of people to determine your fate, or take, a bolder step or create an alternative platform for yourself. And this was what I did. I started something we call mobile cinema, where when my film is made, I go to different states, I go to schools, and I screen these films, to students, and also in places where they don't have large or big cinemas or big screens. Uh, and then after then, I've always wanted to have a one-stop place, where creatives can come, whether you're a book writer, whether you're a filmmaker or sculptor or artist. And Netflix reached out in 2014 to say they are interested in October 1. Of course, there wasn't sales agent. The film is not being represented by any sales agent. So they reach out directly. And this is what I'm always saying to filmmakers, that look, if your product is good, sometimes your products will create a new model, for economically and all of that. So they reached out. The negotiation was directly with Netflix, and they acquired the film. They licensed the film for like 2 years on their platform. Now, this period, Netflix was not really present in Nigeria. You can only stream Netflix if you have maybe a US or Europe account, of Netflix. And after then, they came back and they set up in Africa, and then they reacquired all the films that I have done, um, and which lapsed last year, and they relicensed all the films again for another 2 years. But when we did a citation in 2019, and they reached out and said, look, we're interested in doing more, and can we have a slate? And they decided to sign three slate film, or three film slates with me. Um, Sorry, someone. Okay.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
yeah, so they decided to sign three film slates with me, and which is meant to be a film a year. Now, the kind of comfort you get from that is, look, you don't have to run around for another 3 years looking for money to make a film.
You know what you're
And
saying, Kunle, is really interesting, because what you did is that you created the sustainability of your own ecosystem, which then brought the big accounts saying we can bank on them. And in many ways, that is what Manet did with Tarifa, and Manet, um, that the whole idea of translating films into Spanish, African films into Spanish, which completely widens the accessibility. And same with what Najla is doing, in terms of expanding the visibility of Libyan artists. I think the common denominator here, which is really interesting, is that sustainability and the art, you guys have been doing almost developmental work in many ways. So yes, it's culture, but the infrastructure, the developmental work that each one of you does individually, then brings the question, which I will put to Professor Rimayedi, is how do we turn this from an individual case legwork, I mean, be it Kulle, be it Angel, be it Najla, be it Manet, be it Anna, all of them do the legwork physically and as individuals in order to do something. And everything they've created, what happens next? How do we get this to become sustainable and built on? So, Professor Ayadi, you are the expert in all of this. So, some comments on what everyone has been saying, and maybe it would be great if you then wrap up the session and let's think of recommendations we want to put forth.
Thank you very much, Jihan, and I would like to thank all the experiences, or the, I would say, the creatives that we heard, and the panelists for their recommendations and what they can do for the cultural creative industry. Now, yes, I want to start from where Pierre Luigi ended, saying that we need to build a real industry in cultural creative in Africa. And I think there is large potential, as we could see. We see the experience of Kunal, who really took a proactive approach, trying really to take the risk and then manage his risk with a clear vision and a clear action plan. But then he had that target and idea to go forward and develop. And what I also liked very much to hear is that he's also helping others within this free academy that he mentioned to learn from this great experience, and also that will help to mainstream what he did and what others also did from the experiences we heard in the industry. These are very important actions that need to be mainstreamed and built on. And I think within the partnership between Europe and and Africa should be also taken into consideration the fact that creativity and culture and the creative culture economy should be a pillar for development, for self-expression, for social transformation, and also for value creation. There is large potential, as we heard it, and there is a willingness from different stakeholders that could be really putting their hands in their hands, I would say, together to build the sector, because it's not only one action that could make a difference, but several multitude of actions that could be put forward. And one of the actions, and I am still very happy to mention that the Creative Mediterranean that we are managing at the Euro-Mediterranean Economist Association with other partners, it's a small action, but it will have an impact because it's really mainstreaming this culture and creativity within the sector, and this would provide a kind of platform which will allow the entrepreneurs in these specific sectors to prosper via, for example, knowledge sharing. So, for example, they don't have to go and look for the knowledge, but then we provide them the knowledge within the different subsectors in the cultural creative industry, targeted, what can be done, how it is done, and then the latest information and the latest opportunities that could be put in front of them. Second, and I still repeat, training, training, and training. I think this is important to allow all these talents, young talents, to understand how to formulate a vision, how to develop an action plan, and how to also understand the risk profile. I mean, what type of risk they want to take and how they can manage it. And third is funding. I think Mubarak mentioned the fund. I think we should have specific funds and also specific guarantee instruments, Nagla mentioned it as well, to help those entrepreneurs that have an idea, that have an action plan, that have a vision to develop their activities and to mainstream it. And obviously, actors like the European Union with a very developed sector, I mean, an industry in the culture and creative, can also provide the support to regional partnership between Africa and and Europe. I think this is all would really create a dynamic, will create a dynamic of sustainability, which is a financial sustainability, business model sustainability, and then mainstreaming activities in the overall community. So, Jihan,
I actually wanted to pick up here and ask Mané. Shall I ask in French or is it being translated? Okay, I'll say it in English and then say it in French again, because I think one of the things that have come out from everybody's experience is that there's this gap between the awareness of the policymakers and the ground. And Mané, I mean, given what she's been doing in FCAT, the importance and the sustainability and the how and why was proved year in, year out, continuously. But how to widen this, how to make it is something that never really happened. It's never taken for granted that you will have the means to continue. Je répète, Mané, ou bien ça a été traduit? En fait, ma question, c'est que c'est évident depuis des années et des années, l'intérêt, la sustainabilité, l'intérêt du festival, par exemple, comme modèle, mais comment convaincre les politiques qu'une expérience individuelle doit devenir quelque chose de plus grand et plus sustainable. Votre expérience par rapport à tout ça, qu'est-ce que vous direz? Quelle est la chose, il faut dire, voilà, à partir de maintenant, il faut comprendre que...
Ok, alors moi je crois que j'ai compris qu'il fallait être pressant à tous les niveaux et surtout au niveau politique, et des espaces, des réflexions très proches au pouvoir. Et ce que j'ai fait, j'ai essayé de faire, je fais toujours partie des groupes de réflexion qui assessore le président d'Espagne et en matière des politiques culturelles avec l'Afrique. Et je fais partie des observatoires qui réfléchissent sur ces politiques. Ça fait, je dirais, une quinzaine d'années que j'essaye d'ouvrir et de positionner l'Espagne en triangle avec l'Amérique latine, parce que je considérais que l'Amérique latine pouvait avoir des échanges et pouvait signifier des nouveaux horizons, des modèles économiques pour les cinémas d'Afrique. Mais ça n'a pas fonctionné. Et je crois que c'est parce que systématiquement, on nous considère trop européens pour parler d'Afrique et trop africains pour être considérés européens. Donc, ces ponts culturels qu'on a essayé de bâtir entre l'Afrique et l'Europe nous a fait nous trouver en pleine mer, des façons qu'on n'est pas écoutés ni des uns et des autres. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on fait à la fin de compte? C'est de continuer à mener des actions durables dans la possibilité de nos ressources. Et donc, par exemple, maintenant, on est arrivé à la conclusion qu'il fallait mettre en pied un forum des post-productions qui pousse, qui aide à l'Espagne, cette industrie cinématographique espagnole qui a du mal à regarder et établir des rapports commerciaux avec l'Afrique, à rentrer dans les coproductions avec les productions africaines. Apparemment, ça commence à fonctionner. Voilà. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à tes questions.
Oui, mais justement, mais on a l'impression qu'on doit devenir presque politique pour pouvoir continuer à être créative. Donc là, je poserai la question à Angèle. Si Angèle est là, je sais qu'elle est en tournage. Donc, Angèle? Bon. Let me ask when Angèle comes back, let me ask Yusuf. Est-ce que...
je suis là.
Ah, Angèle, bon. On reviendra à vous, Yusuf. Angèle. Donc là, on tournait autour de l'idée de comment on devient, c'est comment dire sustainable en français?
Hein? Comment on devient bankable?
Oui, mais enfin, un peu bankable, sustainable, en tant que créatif pour pouvoir en plus élargir notre expérience. Et Manet a dit que la présence dans le sphère politique est très important. Et je sais que toi, Angèle, tu as eu cette expérience. Mais est-ce que c'était une expérience où pour toi, quelles sont les limites, quels sont les besoins de garder presque l'intégrité des deux choses, quoi?
Moi, je pense qu'il faut un équilibre. C'est sûr qu'il faut de la politique. Il ne faut plus que les artistes soient isolés et se disent que je vais construire une industrie autour de mon art seul. C'est avec les politiques qu'on peut le faire, c'est avec les mécènes qu'on peut le faire, c'est avec aussi les organismes qu'on peut le faire. Et moi, je voudrais dire que l'exemple de Kunle, en tout cas, le système de Kunle est un exemple parce qu'il arrive à être indépendant, il arrive à faire ses films, à s'autofinancer plusieurs projets par an. Dans le même sens, nous, par exemple, cinéastes francophones, avons du mal et passons facilement 4 à 5 ans à chercher des financements pour nos films, même quand on a le FOPICA, parfois c'est très long parce que la question qu'on doit se poser, c'est la pérennisation de ces fonds qu'on met ensemble, du fonctionnement même. Parce qu'on a beau avoir 2 milliards, si le fonctionnement ne permet pas de financer chaque année tant de longs métrages sénégalais, alors il y a un problème. Parce qu'on ne peut pas avoir plus d'argent que tous les autres pays, en tout cas en Afrique de l'Ouest. Il n'y a pas beaucoup de pays aujourd'hui qui peuvent dire qu'on a un fonds de 2 milliards pour notre cinéma. Nous, on peut le dire. Alors pourquoi on n'arrive pas à au moins produire 2 ou 3 longs métrages par an et un court métrage? C'est qu'il y a quelque part, il doit y avoir quelque part un problème de fonctionnement et d'organisation même dans la façon dont on en tout cas, produit et qu'on donne ce fonds-là. Et ça, et je pense que c'est pour ça que la collaboration avec les politiques, avec des productrices, avec des distributrices, tout le monde est important qu'on puisse se poser sur des tables et dire, voilà, dans ce cas spécifique du Sénégal, dans ce cas spécifique du Nigeria, de quoi a-t-on exactement besoin? Comment on peut fonctionner pour que ça aille un peu plus vite? Moi, j'aimerais pouvoir faire plus de films et plus régulièrement que d'en faire. Quand on prend autant de temps pour faire un film, à la fin, on est tellement épuisé qu'on ne peut même pas bien faire la promotion ou même apprécier le film. Tout ce qu'on veut, on le fait pour qu'il sorte, en fait. Oui. On ne le fait plus parce qu'on a l'envie et la passion de faire le film. On le fait parce qu'il doit sortir. Et c'est ça qui est dommage, en tout cas, dans la majeure partie des projets francophones. Ça, c'est plus
d'ailleurs, c'est intéressant
que d'Afrique anglophone.
D'ailleurs, Angèle, tu as bien mentionné, chaque pays, peut-être un des problèmes dans le secteur culturel sur le continent, c'est qu'on s'adresse à l'Afrique comme si c'était un seul pays.
Tout à fait.
Et la réalité est très différente d'un pays à un autre. Et c'est là où je voudrais aller plus vers Youssef, parce que vous venez de Paris et vous vous retrouvez en Tunisie. Et la culture même de design, vous avez dit que ça n'existait pas. Et quand vous parlez de la Tunisie, c'est très différent du reste de l'Afrique. Donc, comment on peut faire cette réflexion à partir d'un pays pour réfléchir ensemble sur la sustainability de tout un secteur?
Je pense que c'est vrai que la culture en Tunisie n'existe pas, mais on revient à ce que vous avez dit tout à l'heure, c'est par rapport aux politiques, c'est les politiques qui ne sont pas n'investissent pas assez dans ces domaines-là. Je pense que nous, on peut être, en tant que pays et position géographique, on peut s'ouvrir plus facilement à l'Europe pour ce genre d'initiative-là culturelle. On a une culture francophone et on a une culture assez proche de la France et de l'Italie et une culture méditerranéenne assez impactante. Je pense qu'on peut être le pont ou aussi une façon de s'ouvrir à l'Europe assez différemment avec la culture ou avec le design. C'est juste des initiatives, en fait, en Tunisie, et je pense Nord-Afrique, ce qui manque, c'est les initiatives liées à la culture et non pas la culture même. Donc, je pense que c'est par là qu'on doit commencer à faire, créer des initiatives, montrer l'intérêt des échanges qu'on peut avoir, l'intérêt d'une culture qu'on peut développer et commencer à la propager, faire appel à des collaborations dans l'Afrique et la montrer un peu plus à l'Europe et pouvoir faire des échanges entre eux, ces deux continents, parce que tout est possible. Il suffit juste je pense, à mon avis, il manque juste d'initiative.
Oui, initiative, which makes me go to Najla for a minute. I think what Yusuf was saying and this idea, we tend to think south, north, north, south, south, south. How do we, I mean, Najla, you are based in Europe, in a very competitive city.
Yes.
And you have managed to kind of find this zone where what it is you are talking about in the south has a relevance in the north. So it's these bridges that rather than these separations, how do you envisage them to become systematic, not just one-offs?
It's very difficult to get your idea across, to also connect. But as you said, I'm very lucky to be, I don't know, London is very, it's very cosmopolitan, and also the diasporic community is very important, and there are huge diasporic communities from all of North Africa and the world, really, in London. And I think now they've got like third and second generations who have links to this part of the world, and you know, their culture is part of them that has been taken to London, and London is sort of giving it back to them. So there is this kind of exchange and hunger for knowledge and hunger to know more, and that's why I think I found the space where I can operate, and the interest is always there, and there's more interest. I mean, every time, I mean, the problem for me is finding the right funding. It's very difficult, and also how to put, as Yusuf said, initiatives where we are, especially in places of conflict, like Libya is a mess at the moment, and to try to highlight what's going on there, and also for them to understand what's going on in Europe. And I think culture and the arts has that ability to sort of bridge the differences, and also to find out the similarities, which this is what I always keep finding, is there are so many similarities in our way of life, in our cultures, in our histories, that there is a connection, and this is what keeps me going, really. And the need to have these small initiatives is very, very important. And also, I think what we need really from Europe or the West is I'm going to talk in the small sort of means, is to create more exchanges between the two parts.
I would even say to desire to listen to what is
Yes.
happening on the ground,
Exactly.
rather than decide in advance.
To have these preconceived ideas of what's going on.
I would like the last, because we're running out of time almost, I would like to go to the other Nagla, Bahr, and ask if you had one thing to suggest to the creatives, to say, if you're going to come see me, that is the one thing you need to make sure you have in order to be sustainable, in order to be able to work as a business with your creativity. What would you say?
I was just raising the hand over here, to just recommend something at that level, because this is really very important. As I said, we have all the creators with their passion, with their talent, with their everything, and they need finance and they need to have an effect. And we talked about a public policy, and we all agreed about that, that this is not on top of the agenda. Are we going to wait, or we take one step ahead and just go and maybe impose on public policies, the presence of those creators and their effect? I will take the second one, and I will go and talk about it from a business perspective. From my point of view, there is a very, I think we have an opportunity and a momentum for the meantime, where, as it has been said, the African culture with all its diversification and across the different countries, French or Italians or English or Arabic or whatever it is, has its own presence and attracting from a perspective or two. So I recommend actually that we take it one step ahead and we do like the mix of establishing, I'm not sure to say what, establishing a fund, establishing a platform where there is a mix of number of things. Mix of investors, like real investors, because we need this business aspect directly. Mix of grants, which is very important. So I don't like to have it grants only, because this comes and just disappears. We want to do like a complete platform, a bond or something like that. We call it a culture bond. And within these bonds that we create, we have investors, we have grants, and we have all those maybe public as well, so we have it all. But it should run as a pure business, and it will go to even bondholders. Guarantee schemes can step in to guarantee the risk of this investment or the risk of this finance, whatever it will go across, and it will be open to Africa, So all those independent ideas, whatever it is, will come under this umbrella, have this access to finance plus technical assistance. The most important thing is the technical assistance there, is to turn it into business. I cannot count the passion, the talent needed, and we need to preserve it as is. But we need to complement it with this business aspect for the sustainability and the continuity.
Administrating. I mean, a fund like that, who administers it?
It should be pure private. It should fall for a private, because you had this model before, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's so we're running out of time, and I really need to hand this back to. But one of the things that Mr. Mubarak Law was saying is our ability on the continent. We have so many rich people on the continent. They invest in Hollywood rather than investing locally. They invest in so many things. What is it we can do to bring them to the table under an umbrella like suggested? And I would go now I would like to hand over again as a wrap up, and I would have loved to hear more from so many people. I don't know how the 2 hours flew, but if there's anyone who wants to say anything for a minute or two before Professor Reem wraps up. Anna, go ahead, yes.
Yeah, it's just, I'd like to stress that I totally agree with what Nagla was saying, and some of you already said too, that it's all about business, trying to forget about it, the idea of granting everything, funding everything from public institutions, and try to push business. Like my company, we do business with African authors. We charge a commission. We just get a commission on what they earn, like any other client from any part of the world. We treat African authors like clients, full stop. We don't care where they're based. They're in New York, they're in Dakar, they're in whatever they are. So I think if we just try to make business from both sides, from Europe and from Africa, and it's a win-win situation, then we'll move forward. Otherwise, we will be stuck. So I really encourage any creative, any talent, any company to try to think in Africa to do equality business like we would do within Europe or between Europe and the States or whatever part of the world.
Fantastic. I would love this to go on for another hour, but unfortunately that...
Yeah, let Mubarak make a comment.
Okay, yeah, I actually can't see anyone on the screen, so I'm navigating blindly. So yes, Mubarak, please.
Oui, je voulais réagir par rapport au schéma de financement. Effectivement, un grand fonds au niveau mondial, comme suggéré par la dame qui est dans le fonds de garantie, ce sera difficile à administrer avec des entraîneurs cinématographiques. Je pense qu'il faudrait réfléchir peut-être sous forme de refinancement. Par exemple, nous au Sénégal, en dehors de ce que l'État fait, nous avons une délégation à l'entrepreneuriat qui est en train de soutenir des entrepreneurs dans le domaine agricole, dans le domaine numérique, dans le domaine industriel, etc. Donc, on peut avoir également un programme spécial pour les créateurs soutenu par cette délégation. Et donc, le fonds qui serait créé, comme suggéré par Nagla, pourrait refinancer, disons, les initiatives nationales. Moi, je pense que c'est mieux, parce que c'est mieux de les administrer au plus près des créateurs. Donc, à mon avis, on peut trouver une solution équilibrée avec un refinancement global, un fonds de refinancement global, mais une gestion locale. Merci.
Et il y avait un fonds, une proposition d'un fonds comme ça à l'Union africaine, et chaque ministère de culture a commis un certain nombre de pourcentage de financement. À voir, peut-être ça aussi peut être intéressant. And Rim, please do come give us the last word of such an interesting conversation, and I hope we can do this again.
Thank you very much, Jihan. I think this panel has been tremendously rich in terms of experiences from the creatives that we heard and how they made their businesses become known, and they are, all of them, and I hear that they are making the effort to make it sustainable. From the side of the other panelists, certainly we can propose these funds which could be specifically oriented to the culture creative industries with certain, I would say, allocations based on the different subsectors that we heard, probably administrated under the African Union or others. So for sure, this can be discussed, and this could be a proposal that we can put forward in the Africa Summit, EU-Africa Summit that is happening currently with the head of states. I can see that Mubarak, he's from Senegal, the chairmanship of the African Union and European Union is also in Senegal. So I think you are close, Mubarak, to propose this, what we have discussed today to the president. And then at the same time, from the EU, we know very well that the European Union is reviewing, rethinking its partnership with the African continent. And I would forcefully suggest and recommend that creativity and culture and CCI must be pillars for development for the post-recovery from COVID-19 and beyond. And I think these are all elements that not only take into account the cultural diversity that the continent has, but beyond this, it's the interconnections between Europe and Africa. And this is extremely essential for what I call for the prosperity that we want to achieve going forward, and also the peace that we want to achieve going forward, and building on experiences like what we heard today, of all the experiences with no exception from Yusuf, from Angel, from Kunil, from Nagla, from all. I think this it's a great voice to really to rewrite the narratives from experiences that, despite the obstacles, despite the difficulties, despite the risks, and despite the fact that this CCI sector in general is a niche still in Africa, some cases have really moved the dynamic forward, and they can give to all the new talent, the youth and women, and all of the talent that are in this industry, I would say the ambition and the energy to move forward. Of course, with the support of players like Nagla Bahar guarantees. Also, I want to mention that with Nagla Bahar, we have been developing a regional scheme or a regional network for the moment for guarantees. And I am trying to develop something specific on the cultural creative industries. But this is one initiative, and I echo once again what Nagla mentioned about this platform that could link the investors, the grants, the public policy, and businesses. This is what we're also trying to do in the Creative Mediterranean. And then we would like to see that this Creative Mediterranean platform that we have developed for North Africa, Middle East would enlarge to Africa, and it creates a hub and hubs not only in Barcelona but also in all the cities in the African Union and in the Middle East. And I am very happy to have met all of you. Thank you very much, Jihan, for this great moderation. I would like to thank all the talent that we have heard today, all the panelist speakers. And thank you very much also for the team at EMEA who has made this event possible, and all the teams of the EU Africa Week who have helped in the broadcasting and the streaming of this event. Our next step would be, we will try with Jihan to write a few bullet points to the head of state, hopefully very soon, and then we can publish them on our website. Also would like to ask all the speakers, all the creatives today to co-sign with us, to have really clear proposals to allow us to move forward into this journey. And you are all invited to contribute to our platform and to our journey. And thank you very, very much again for this very great event and very great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. It all starts with inspiration, and we'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. And it was a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Jihan. Thank you, everybody.